Everybody get amped up.
Woo!
The Michael Jackson.
You went high, I went low, and then Josh and Fish just sat there in silence.
No, I didn't do the Michael Jackson. I think that was Josh, actually.
Oh, damn. Oh, you got me. Welcome all to the Chompcast, the one and only podcast of your beloved sword chomp. My name is Morgan Barnes, and I am joined by my fellow co-hosts, the original OGs, Joshua Fowler.
Evening, everyone.
Shay Layton.
Yo, yo, yo.
There we go. Shay's into it. Anthony Fisher.
Hello there.
No. Okay, let's try this again. Joshua Fowler.
Yes.
Yeah. And Anthony Fisher.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. All right, I like it. We're waking up a little bit. Shay was into it, so he didn't get the double on the spot. Thank you, Shay.
You're welcome.
He always good at playing along. We have an epic podcast today. Our main headlining game discussion this week centers around the much buzzed about game Inside. But we also have some other discussion around some big fall heavy hitters like Mafia 3, Titanfall 2, and of course, the news, good stuff today, Blizzcon, Tomb Raider leak, and Titanfall sales. So it's going to be a really epic show. But before we get into Inside, we need to catch up with the crew here at Sword Chomp. It has been a whole week. We got to find out what everyone's been up to. Get the vocal cords moving. Josh, glad to have you here today. How have you been doing this week, my friend?
Pretty good. Still getting over this cold that I had a couple weeks back. And just decided to linger in my chest. So I've been hacking up a storm for the last week. So that's always fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need like a tally every time Josh mentions that he's ill on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I haven't been ill for a while now, but just this cough and just taking a while.
He hasn't been ill. He
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been ill, but he's been illin', if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, bringing it back.
Ain't nobody illin' like Morgan.
And yeah, right before we started this podcast, I was giving Josh shit because he was actually watching the World Cup for Overwatch, which just goes to show how deep Josh is down that rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Was it entertaining though, Josh?
Very, very actually. It's been, yeah. I don't know if anyone's watching it live or watching on a recording, so I don't want to spoil stuff. But Sweden, right?
Sweden, right? Well, this will be up in a couple days, so I don't think it'll really be spoiling it for anybody. So that's cool. I'm glad you're here today. It should be a lot of fun, especially considering we had an epic fight about Limbo many years ago, and we'll see what happens with Inside, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Fight might be a little rough. A debate, I should say.
Maybe we'll see.
There's some heated debate. I remember the days of SPT. There's some heated debates on Limbo.
God, it's rough being around Morgan when he's that wrong.
Man.
I try to be contagious. And I'm not wrong, Josh. I just try to infect everyone with my wrongness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that's how it works. But yeah, glad to have you here today, Josh. And Shay.
Yes, sir.
Happy you are here. I know you've had a busy week teaching. That's weird. You really are the professor now.
Whoa. Yeah, I guess so. Weird.
Kind of dawned on you there, huh?
Yeah. Well, let's be clear. I don't have a PhD, so I'm not officially a professor, unfortunately, yet. But yeah.
I'm referring to you. Go ahead and catch him up. Sorry.
No, it's good. So one of my 3 jobs is working for a company online teaching English to Chinese students. They can be children or adults. And this week has just been packed. It's been insane. Like I I taught this young girl, and she liked me a lot, and she gave me a really good rating because that's how they kind of base how well the teachers are doing. And so
Mhm.
my score ballooned up to 100%, and then just all of a sudden,
Okay.
like I had taught 4 people last month, and all of a sudden I'm teaching 5 lessons a day now, and I have bookings all next week, and that's never happened. So I'm just, it's finally like I was about to quit the job too because I was like, man,
Oh
I'm waking
wow.
up every morning and I am I'm not getting these bookings, and I'm tired of waking up at 5 a.m. And it's
That
fine.
that's
Yeah,
that's
just about to
crazy.
quit. Yeah, I was like, if by the end of this week I don't get enough bookings, I'm done. And I just hung in there long enough, and yeah, I been doing a lot of teaching, but it's been good. Yeah, and I'm really excited to talk about Inside. I ended up liking the game a lot more than I thought I would, and I'm excited to talk about Mafia 3. I think it'll be a good podcast.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool to hear. And Fish, I know you have had a crazy week trying to cram inside. I'm not trying to be punny there or anything. And your poor, your cram inside, and your poor wife was sick.
Yeah,
So it's
she
been kind of
was.
hectic. Tell us about it.
Yeah, she had a kidney stone. I didn't know how serious it was for her, but she was having back pain and everything from it. Um, but yeah, she's doing better now. She's recovering from it. Taking a lot of pain medicine to kind of manage her pain from it. But she's doing well now. But I was worried for her because
So
she had to be hospitalized and they had to do a surgery because the kidney stones were just too big to pass through the urinary tract.
well,
So
that's
they
like a fear of all men, right? Having to pass a kidney stone
oh yeah,
through
yeah,
your
it's so
Your
manhood.
painful. It's painful for
urethra.
women. Urethra, yes. Thank you, Shay.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
it's a very painful thing, I think, because it's those kidney stones are like actual like little pebbles pretty much going through your flesh, which doesn't sound.
The human body's a fucked up thing sometimes. That's for sure.
It is, yeah. But yeah, she's doing well. Between that and taking care of my daughter, making sure she's getting to school in the mornings, because usually my wife is on that task of doing that every morning. But since she's been out, recovering, um, I've kind of had to take the liberties to do that myself. So I've been pretty sleep deprived throughout the week, but I managed to cram in some time with Inside. Didn't get to finish it, but I'm excited to talk about what I did play.
Yeah, yeah. And next week when you finish it, we'll have a spoiler cast, a little teaser here. We'll go fully into the spoilers of Inside. So if you've enjoyed the game and you want to hear our thoughts on that, that'll probably be next week on our next show. But yeah, glad to have you here, Fish, and glad your wife is doing better.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as kind of in segue here, it's been a crazy week. I was joking with you guys beforehand that I just found out some crazy news like right before this podcast. I've been working feverishly to close on a house that we bought, and the offer was accepted, and we're kind of in that awkward stage where it's like a month before you officially sign the papers, and we just found out today. And the seller was also surprised that my house at one point was a meth house.
Awesome. Free
Whoa.
drugs in the wall.
That's what
Right.
I'm saying. They're trying to get these cleaners in there, and I'm like, no, 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 no. You guys are doing this wrong.
Man, if I'm really drunk one night, I need to be able to lick the walls to get high. Keep it going.
They're talking about how like
And
we're
who
glad
doesn't
they
want a
caught it.
basement that can melt you if you accidentally step in the wrong spot? No.
You just disintegrate is your yeah, exactly.
Or maybe he meant that like as a state of mind where you just step and you absorb the drugs through your foot, and suddenly you're just high for 8 hours in your basement, wondering why you're playing Doom in your basement when you're not actually playing.
Just has a pretend shotgun shooting at the walls.
Yeah, it's Uncharted 4 in your basement.
Just crouching behind boxes all the time.
Randomly have things hanging on the basement ceiling.
That's how we live my life, Josh. Just crouching behind boxes all the time, Solid Snake style. But yeah, it's weird because like yeah. Anyway, so that whole thing was strange, and I guess they're worried that like when they if they had furnace had set off or something, if there was stuff in there, it could be fine. We're gonna have cleaners go in there and do their thing, but so it's just such a random. Even the seller was shocked. I'm like, how do you fucking not know that this house is a meth house? How does this happen?
So do you have to pay for that, or is that something that they'll have to pay for?
Oh yeah, fuck no. They can't make you pay for that. It's a little concerning when you think about the house resale value. You can actually there's actually a meth list. There's a list for that. You know, houses that have had meth take place in them or incidents like that. And yeah,
Okay.
so you don't want to be on that list because if you try to resell your house in the future, and someone's interested and they find out your house is a meth house, they're like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, that's a little disturbing because what if, some of the old like customers who used to visit that meth house start randomly showing up at your house thinking, oh, the meth house
I've
is
lived
back
in one
up.
of those houses.
Yeah, they just go into like a binge of some sort of drug crazed delirium and just end up stumbling over onto my street because that's what they're used to going. And all of a sudden I got
Knocking
a
on
fucking
your door
meth
at
house.
5 a.m.
Fucking needles just jammed, 3 needles deep, just jammed into the left arm.
Three
Yeah,
needles deep, man.
Don't want
Ugh.
that shit.
Anyways, kind of a weird thing I just found out about. So we're dealing with all that shit right before the podcast, among other things. Speaking of meth, Inside. That's not. I don't know. That's all.
Awesome segue.
Huh.
Thank you. Maybe you never know, depending on how you guys feel about it. No, I mean this is a really interesting. These are the kind of games that I get the most excited to talk about when we do this podcast. I love doing the podcast, but for me personally, these are the kind of games I get the most excited about because they're just really interesting and divisive sometimes. It is eligible for the Game of Year discussion, potentially. It's a game from Play Dead. It was released this year, 2016. And Play Dead, of course, famous for making Limbo, which was huge back in the day, came into the scene on, Xbox Live Arcade. I don't remember the exact year. I think it was like
2011.
11. Okay. Thank you, Shay.
No, I'm sorry. It was 2010 because that was one of the first conversations we had, and that's when I joined the podcast. I'm sorry.
That's true. It was that. I remember. Funny story
I
about that.
It was 09 or 010 because I know 09 a bunch of those indie games came out, but I think this was the year after that because Braid was like one of the first run games.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Josh. Braid kind of started the flow, and I remember Shay. That's how we met. He was like kind of checking out our show, I think at the time, from one of our friends, and he was playing. You were actually playing Limbo the day I met you. You said you were working on it.
Yeah, I remember that. That was actually back in I want to say August because that's back when you were still working at the Exchange on base, and Adam had mentioned that you guys may need a new host, and he told me to listen to your guys' podcast, and he's like, and you were like, how do you feel about Limbo? And I was like, it's a really good game. I'm kind of struggling with it right now. And then you had mentioned Josh briefly about how one of the hosts hated the game, and I was like,
You got to listen to the show, Shay, because there's this guy, Josh, fucking dude. He's ripping this game apart. It's driving me crazy.
He's tearing me apart.
But yeah, so that's it. That's the setup there. It's very Limbo-esque. I was trying to think of a good way to start this thing, but it's such an interesting game because it is similar to Limbo in a lot of ways. But I remember, Josh, when I first started talking to you about it, because you played it before we did, you seem to be a little bit more on board with Inside as opposed to Limbo, and I was just wondering, why was that?
I think a lot of it had to do with where they decided to put the difficulty. Because Limbo put a lot more difficulty in the physicsy platforming portions, which have never felt good to me. I mean, you kind of know what I'll explain that. But like a lot of games at that point had started making platformers, but instead of like programming in specific physics for stuff, basically just ran it on whatever the engine had built in. Stuff like, the first Limbo game, and it ended up making just some really floaty feeling platforming that I was not into. I mean, stuff like that, and like,
because it's kind of a
Little Big
physics-based
Planet,
puzzle game.
Stuff like that. Yeah. And I was
into
not into that as much. So.
Yeah.